on YouTube? It's your girl, Chrissy. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Ciphered Knowledge with Chrissy. I appreciate it. It's getting warm outside. I can only imagine you guys want to be out. But the great thing is you just take your phone with you and you still watch it from outside. Listen, if this is your first time watching, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell so you can be notified when I go live. I go live every Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But with all of that out of the way, I am honored. I have a seasoned podcaster with me, 10 years in the making. I am just a baby in bathwater. I don't know anything that I'm doing compared to my man, Quincy here, the host of Talk2Q Radio. I mean, it's more than just a podcast. He says no experts, just opinions, but I think my man is an expert here. So go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewers.
First of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. It is a pleasure to be here. You're too kind with your words. And just want to say hello to everyone. I am the host of the Talk2Q Radio show. Like she said, no experts, just opinions. It's a place for people to get things off their chest. I throw out a wide range of topics, mostly relationships, but we get into politics, current events, and more. And I pose the questions and the people participating give me answers, my panelists. I do interviews now and then, but for the most part, the show was built on an old talk radio type of foundation, which is why I continue to keep the name the Talk2Q Radio show, even though technically it's a podcast, because it's just like, the old school AM talk radio shows where I allow people to participate in the discussion. Anyone can join in, just a matter of reaching out to me and letting me know that you want to be on the show, or you can participate from the chat room. So we have a lot of fun. Chrissy has been a guest multiple times. She's always awesome. And like I said, I'm glad to be here on your platform.
Thank you. So as everyone can see, you see his website right below. I'll be clicking through his handles as well as his website. That's his website on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can find him at Talk2Q. And he also has a blog if you want to know his deep, dark secret. No, I'm joking. They're not deep, dark secrets. But they are.
You'll learn a lot about me there.
You definitely will over at his blog. So, I knew season 3, because I've done, like you said, a couple of your shows, and I knew that I wanted to get you on. And this show is all about providing information and knowledge. And I think this is great. I see my show kind of changing gears and stuff, but it's still informative, I think. And like I said, even though you say you are not an expert, you are an expert. You are wise. So
well, thank you.
So we're talking about men. And what does it take to be a man? So, that's very broad. But let's just start with that. What does it take to be a man? What is your definition of a man?
I guess a man, in my opinion, is made up of 6 components. Okay. The late and great Dr. Miles Monroe once said that a man is 6 things. A man is a visionary, a leader, a provider, protector, a cultivator, and a teacher. And if you do all of those 6 things, then that's what actually is the formula for being a man. Any one thing you may lack prevents you from being considered the definition of a man. And so I kind of follow that mindset when it comes to discussing these types of things, that, you have to, like I said, be a visionary, being able to forecast, plan. There are a lot of people in the world who don't plan outside of the weekend. Plan for your future, plan for your children's future, things of that nature. You have to be a leader, provider, protector. Those are self-explanatory. A teacher as well, a cultivator, acquire knowledge, develop others, and prepare things to use. That's what a cultivator is. So I think those 6 things is what makes up a man.
Okay. So that's a great package, right? That's a great package. So you said if you're missing one of those things and one of those elements, then does that take that manhood away from you? What are you then?
A dude, a guy, um, a boy in man's clothing. Any of those things. It doesn't mean that you can't. I mean, if you fall short, you can still be on your way to being that person. There are a lot of people who may possess all of those qualities. Maybe they don't have the best job, so they're not a great provider financially. But I mean, being a provider doesn't necessarily mean just financially. You have to provide security for your significant other. And, that means emotional security as well as maybe physical security. So being a provider, it means multiple things. But so there's some people who may be a little short, and I wouldn't necessarily knock them for it. But as far as saying you're a man when you're not completing those 6 components, I wouldn't go that far.
So what do you think about the men who think, all right, I go to work, I come home, I pay the bills, the house is taken care of, the kids are taken care of. I'm a man. Like, I don't need anything else. I don't need to cultivate. I don't need to do any of those other things. My job is to wake up in the morning, go to work, come home, and that's it.
Well, you have some old school people who had that type of mentality. My grandfather, I didn't know any of my grandfathers, but my grandmothers have told me stories about them. They were the type of people who would get up, go to work, come home, give the wife the money, sit down on the couch, didn't want to be bothered with kids or things of that nature. And now I would consider them cultivators because there were times they did take, to teach the boys how to farm or hunt or whatever people did back in the 20s. Well, back in the 1920s, let me say that, because we're in the 20s now, back in the 1920s. But I do think that the generations kind of look at things a little differently. If you're someone who believes in tough love, then you may not necessarily be the teaching, cultivating type, but you kind of do it in your own way, just not in the more progressive ways that we see, in modern day times. Like now, it takes a lot more, in my opinion, a lot more explaining to younger people than it did years ago when it was more of a do as I say, not as I do type of mentality.
Exactly. I was scrolling on Facebook. I actually saved the picture. And it was an article from the 1950s. And it said, women, what to do for your husbands. And it was pretty much greet them at the door, take their suitcase. Don't greet him with any complaints. Make sure his dinner's on the table. If he's late for dinner, don't complain. Remember, he might have had a hard day at work. Like... So I was reading all of that and I was like, wow, like how times have changed. We definitely changed. So now, right? So being a provider was one of those things. And I know you said financially may not always, because there are some women that are in the households now that are making more than the men and being able to provide financially. So there are some stay-at-home dads, right? Well, mom is, out there making the money. That's changed generationally. Do you think that makes them less of a man by being a stay-at-home dad? Or
no,
okay, go ahead.
No, because being a provider means that you work. Okay. Now, we all like to get paid for our work in cash, but sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes we work and we get other things. Being a parent is work. Okay. If you're a stay-at-home mom or dad, that's a full-time job. And so you may not be getting necessarily cash payments, but making sure the kids are taken care of, that's payment within itself if your kids come out productive and all. So I do not look at any man who may be a house dad or something as less than a man, because I understand that being a parent is supposed to be a full-time job.
Yeah, no, I agree with you with that. I just love to play the devil's advocate. I think
I do that all the time, so I deserve that.
I think I come from a line of women that are very opinionated, right? They, you thought I was. You should see the women that raised me, right? And I am quick to hear them say, no, a man's got to go to work. That's what a man's supposed to do. Like, what is he like? Why is he staying home? Like, why, it's not conventional and that's not the way. But I feel like if it's okay for a woman to stay home and take care of the kids, then why is it okay? Isn't it okay for the man to stay home and provide and just roll? And I hate to say roles, right? Because you're a team. And this is for dual homes, right? Dual family home, dual parent homes. Not
Yeah.
every home has a dual parent,
Yeah.
but you're a team and you work together as a team, and it doesn't matter who does what, except at the end of the day, it gets done, right? Now, let's look at generationally how the whole scope of being a man has changed, right? And I don't know, I've heard it tossed around that it's because a lot of these boys grow up in single households where the mom is the one raising the
Hmm.
boys to be men. Do you think that so that's why there's some lacking in the leadership of the male role, right? From these young boys who only have the moms raising them. Uh, so do you think that that can be some of the issues generationally on why we're seeing uh, that whole development of the male persona, kind of morphing into something different?
I think so. I think if you just pay attention to the timeline and as statistics start to increase as far as single parent households or single mom households, I think you can kind of see the difference as far as the type of kids we have in society today. And it's not to say that a single mother is not capable of raising a good child, but you have to understand that as a parent, in my personal opinion, I'm not a parent, but I've been a kid before, so I know about parents. But as a parent, as far as, well, I'll speak for myself. I saw my dad do things that a man would do. So therefore, I had something to pattern my life after. Okay, so if I'm a boy growing up in a house with a woman, then I may see my mom bust her behind to do a lot of, to make sure I'm fed, work two jobs, or do whatever she does. That's not showing me how a man works. That's showing me how a woman works. So, I mean, it takes a little more to maybe get that child on the same page as opposed to if he can see someone like himself. We all need to see representation, in order to feel like, hey, someday I can see that, or I mean, I can do that. And a lot of the representation young boys see are out on the street. That's where they see other males who are older than them doing their thing. And when you see that and you start to think, okay, well, this is where I'm ultimately going to go because I can't see anything else in my household. So this is the lifestyle that I need to follow. So as hard as some single moms work and on being parents, I know a lot of them do a good job. I do think there's only so much you can do without a male figure present, being an uncle, you know, or teacher or coach or something.
Grandfather or some
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I want to get back to that, but you said something there about the boys going to the street. But I want to say, even with that, I've even noticed the rules of the street have changed too.
Yeah.
It's not the same code it used to be, right? So even that's morphed into something different. But going back, I am of the mindset that a woman cannot teach a boy how to be a man. And I know I am going to get a lot of backlash for that. But I don't know what it is to be a man. I'm never going to experience what it is to have a penis. I'm sorry. Like, just, I'm not.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my son's father, as he was coming up, he's 20 now. But I remember when he was about that 13 to 15 age when he started giving me the issues. And I said to him, I called him up and I said, hey, listen, I know how to teach our son how to be a Hispanic woman, but I surely do not know how to teach him how to be a black man. So I'm going to need you to step up and kind of do your part. He said, I'll send you books. I said, man, if you don't, because we live in different states, but like I wanted him to be more more around. Like, I do feel like, so I am tough love. I was always tough love with my kids. So they kind of got like a more masculine role for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a man. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, as a nurse, I can tell you how to clean down there. I can tell you what to watch out for and like kind of
Right.
those things health wise. But I don't know what it is to have a first girlfriend. I don't know what it is to tingle, below
Yeah.
as a man.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is to have peer pressure from other males. I can tell you, just shake it off and turn the other cheek and come
Mm-hmm.
back with another witty rebuttal or but
And it sounds great.
it sounds great in theory, but actually putting it in practice, I never knew what that was. So I never knew how to explain it. And I think a lot of these young men end up with abandonment issues as well.
Yeah, I think that you make a good point. I do think that I a single mom can teach her son to be a good kid, to be respectful, to be productive. But like you said, there are going to be certain aspects of a man that she's just not going to be able to teach him. And I would like to backtrack a little bit to what you said about how things are different on the street about code. There is no more code. At one time there was even honor amongst thieves, and that's gone. And I'm not gonna call them friends, but I have associates who used to, live that street life or be wannabe gangsters, I guess, back in my young days. And even now they say, man, these kids are different than when I was young, back in the gang or trying to do whatever I was doing. He said they don't care about anything, and that's because there's no code. And I think code died when the do as I say and not as I do mentality died. Now, people complained about that, saying, no, you're supposed to explain to a kid, negotiate to a kid. And, everybody's parenting style is different. I get that. But once that mentality left, the code left. Because just like chivalry is a code, okay, amongst men.
Hmm.
Now, my dad taught me, son, you open the door for a lady. Well, he told me to open the door for anybody who's approaching, but, especially for a lady.
Hmm.
And it was one of those deals where I didn't have to ask why, because the answer was going to be, because that's what a man does, which is code.
Hmm.
Okay. But people want to question everything now. Well, why? Why I gotta do this? She has arms, she can open the door. And because we let this stuff slide, there's no more code. So therefore, chivalry is on life support. You
Absolutely.
see? So I think that we started to see the evolution of how young guys think when the code was no longer needed, according to these progressive parents.
Yes. So I'm old school. I did it old school all the time. And I will tell you, they may get upset. So I apologize ahead of time. But um, I raised my kids with, foundation, a set of rules, the way I grew up. I grew up the old way. I grew up where if my neighbor saw me doing something wrong, they would whoop my ass and then take me to my mother, and then my mother would whoop my ass because the neighbor had to whoop my ass.
Yeah,
Like, you can't
yeah.
even hit nobody else's kids anymore, right?
Nah,
So
nah, you go to
that's
jail.
yeah, you'll go to jail real fast. So
Hmm.
that's how I grew up. That's how how I was raised. I was raised where somebody's elderly trying to cross the road, you aid them across the street. There's an older woman who comes, or male that comes on the bus, or a pregnant woman or a baby on the bus, the train, you get up, you give them the seat. That's just like, you just do it, right? Like, period. It's just respectful. You go to someone's home and you eat dinner, you clear the table, you do the dishes. Like, that's it, period. Bottom line. So I remember I was one time with my two sons, and then my stepson, and we were over at the VFW. My son was doing a piano recital. He was practicing for his piano recital. So I guess my one son was 17, 18, and the other one was 20. Now, mind you, my 20-year-old my stepson had served in the military.
Okay.
So he was there, right? So my 17-year-old, my biological son, saw the older, veterans cleaning up chairs and tables without even asking. My son jumped up from his seat, got up there. What can I do? Direct me. What do you need? Now, we weren't there for any of that, but that's the way I raised him. You get up, you help, period. So my 20-year-old stepson's sitting there, and I'm like, yo, just sit there and ask for it. And he was like, nobody asked me to help. And I was like,
There you go.
are you kidding me? And he's like, yeah, nobody asked me to help. And I was like, well, nobody asked Elijah to help either, but he's getting his butt up and he sat there like he didn't care. He wasn't getting up to help. So at the end of everything was done, the older gentleman come to me and said, is that your son? Talking about, the one who was helping. And I said, yes. And they were like, you've done a phenomenal job with him. He can come back anytime. Like, he's welcome here anytime. And they said, what about that one? I said, I didn't raise that one. But I think that toughness, right? Like, just, don't ask questions. Do as I say, because I told you. And I was just talking about this, about my youngest one. If I tell you to duck without asking why. You know that I'm going to keep you safe and secure. Duck. If you don't duck, you're probably going to get hit with a bullet. Like, I'm telling you something for your own good. And I think all that goes just, I know we digressed, but that went back to like just the code of just kind of foundations and foundation of things. And I remember we were doing family therapy and the therapist asked my kids, so what are your expectations of your mother? I said, hold the fuck up. What you mean expectations of me? Like, you must be out of your mind. Can we get another therapist? Because they have no expectations. They're lucky they're breathing. Like,
but I mean, that's the way the things are nowadays. And again, it's not to say kids aren't important or their feelings aren't important or things of that nature. But I do believe that there's too much questioning the adults that needs to stop. And when it comes to a young boy, I think that having a man there to instill a code in him is what's needed. We need to just react like you said, your son reacted. And my dad taught me the same thing. If we were somewhere at a gathering or family reunion or something, and people were bringing in tables and chairs, I knew to go help them, or because if I didn't, it's going to be a problem with my dad. Mm-hmm. So, or if there was someone older who carrying groceries and struggling, you went and you helped them. And it was just the right thing to do. And I think that you have to just get people to understand that sometimes you do things and without questioning. Just do it because it's the right thing to do.
Right. And morally, there's just a moral compass, right? Yes. That should be instilled in you. What do you think we need to do? And I mean us, we as a village, right? Need to do to get us back on the right track? I know that's a multi-level question.
Yeah. It's hard. There's so many obstacles in the way. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a neighborhood where generations of families grew up. So everyone knew each other and for the most part looked out for one another. Things are a little different now with the way society is and how hard it is to make a living and pay bills and things of that nature. People are kind of moving from place to place. You may be in an apartment for 6 months or a year. Now you're moving or you have new neighbors, or maybe your neighbors are moving and you have new neighbors. So you don't really get to know people like you once did. So it may be a little more of a challenge for some people to have that type of village mentality when you have different villagers moving in and out all the time and you don't have the opportunity to trust people. But I think stability is the key. Having people in your child's life who are positive and productive, whether it be, someone from school, someone from a church or wherever, you may or a family member or something. I think you have to have stability. And a lot of kids just don't really have that. They just kind of get it how they live. They just take care of themselves. And you have some parents who feel like, well, as long as he has a place to stay and he's getting food, then I've done my job. And it's so much to that. But as far as getting back to a village mentality, the first thing we have to do is stop thinking that nobody can tell our kids what to do. And the best place to make that happen is at school. There are too many times kids manipulate their parents into arguing with teachers over something the kid did. You got to get back, got to get away from that. If my parents ever got called from school, my parents never questioned the teachers. It was always, what did he do? And they corrected it, you
Yep.
know? And so I think we kind of have to stop making it so hard on teachers. And that'll be the first place we can start. But like you said, that's a multi-level question. There's so many
Layers to that
different
onion,
things that have to
right?
be done. Yeah.
So I know we were talking about like the tough love, right? Now, I feel like we often, part of that tough love was that boys and men aren't supposed to cry. That's the one thing that I would like to see change. I would like to see the availability or men a little more open to counseling or therapy or some kind of mental health, and then being able to show their emotions. Do you think that the old school way used to be men don't show their emotions? They don't cry. They keep it to themselves.
I don't have a problem with men crying. I, if you cry all the time, that may seem like a little much. Uh, but I do think that counseling, first of all, is definitely something that men should partake in. If whether there's grief counseling or marriage counseling, or if you're having any type of something that's causing any type of problem, any type of stress related problem, counseling is the answer. So I will say that. But I do think, like when I think about my dad, I've seen my dad cry twice. That's when my mom passed away and at his mom's funeral, my grandmother. Those are the only two times I've ever seen my dad cry. My dad has always been the toughest person that I know. I don't even know if my dad's ever eaten a bag of chips before. I mean, he's just an old school, collard green cornbread dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but there are times when I think back on me growing up as a child, there were times that I think that he probably did need some type of way to express himself or some type of outlet or something. And I'm not saying that crying would have been the answer. Maybe it could have helped or whatever. But there were times where he may have been stressed to the point that he needed something. And so I don't think that there is anything wrong with it if a man cries. Um, and some guys cry at Lion King. I mean, I don't. I mean, it just means you're human.
Right.
Okay, it just means you're human, and I don't necessarily think less of a man because he may cry. Now, if you cry at Lion King, yeah, I may tease you a little bit, and I'm not saying that's right for me to do that, but
Well, I still may just do it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I found with my dad. My dad was as tough as nails, right? That machismo, and this is what I want to get into the different versions of manhood, right? So my
okay,
dad was that machismo man, but I am finding that as he's getting older, he is a little more emotional. I've seen my dad cry more past his 60s than ever when he was a
yeah,
lot younger.
yeah,
So I don't know if he's just becoming in touch with his feelings or just kind of life is like hitting him. But it's like emotional things. Like my brother had a traumatic brain injury, so it was trauma. It was something like that. But then when he, friends passing and things like that. But I've never seen my dad like that at all. Like like, why dad's crying? Like,
yeah,
that's why I wasn't a crier. I was like, I don't like to cry. I don't like to cry. When we were going through the therapy, I don't like to cry. Don't make me cry. I swear to God, if you make me cry, I am getting a new counselor. because we just didn't do it. Like, you just didn't show it. I felt like it was a weakness.
yeah.
So let's talk about those men who think that being a man means being strong and kicking somebody else's ass and not walking away from a fight, but actually engaging in it. What's your take on that?
I think sometimes as a man, you get put in a position you have to jack somebody's jaw. I don't I don't think that should be the first choice. Okay. But I do think that sometimes people put you in a position to where you can't back down because it could, be detrimental in some other type of way. But as far as the macho type, I know there are a lot of women who like that. Okay, because you feel safe and protected because Ray Ray's is hard and everybody in the hood is afraid of Ray Ray and things of that nature. But I just think that there has to be some sort of control at all time. I think a man should always be under control. And if your first instinct is to use your fist, then you may not be necessarily a smart guy. Okay. And so there has to be some balance. A lot of people mistake a person of peace as being unskilled at war. And that's a mistake you don't need to make. People pick on Russell Wilson all the time, because how he loves Sierra and how he's taking care of Future's kid and all that other stuff. Russell Wilson is an NFL quarterback. You roll up on him and his family, he will take your head off, you know. And people
Yeah.
need to understand just because a person may look a certain way or appear to be docile doesn't mean they don't have that dog in them.
Mm-hmm.
So there are going to be times where, yeah, you have to just say, you know what, I'm going to have to hit this dude, you know. But I do think you need to be selective before you partake in any type of violence, especially in 2021, because a lot of times that's going to lead to, okay, now this person's going to be looking for me. I'm looking over my shoulder. It's going to be gunplay, and stuff just gets out of hand now
And
because
there's no more
we're
street
long.
rules.
Yeah,
So
no more
women and
street code.
children are not off limits
Yeah.
anymore.
Back in the day, you beat somebody down, that was it. It's like, hey, you got me, but not now. You beat somebody down now, your whole family's in danger.
Yeah,
So I think you have to
absolutely.
be selective. You can still be tough without being stupid.
Yeah. So it's so funny because with my husband, right, I like to I want I like no, you're more of a man to me if you walk away than engage in any kind of violence. But then in the back of my head, I'm like, kick his ass, kick his ass, kick his ass, right? I just want to see him. Like, just say something like, didn't you see that guy looking at me? Don't you want to go fuck him up? Like, don't you But and I don't know where that lies in me, why that's in there somewhere. But I get what you say. Come on, be a man. My ex-husband, I'll never forget it. There was one day I got out the car, I'm pumping the gas. Yeah, I'm pumping the gas. So you see, I have this morbid thing, but anyway, so I'm pumping the gas because I'm torn because no, I can pump my own gas. I don't need you to pump it, but can you come pump it? Why am I pumping it?
Yeah.
I can't pick out which one I want. And this guy's really looking at me and hitting on me and googly eyes and halfway out the car. And my ex-husband's just looking in the opposite direction because he didn't want to engage. And I'm thinking, that you should have been out there defending me. But then I also get it. He would have been out there defending me. Somebody could have ended up, killed and in jail. And so there's so many more repercussions. But I think in my mind, I want to be that damsel in distress. But no, I don't want to be the damsel in distress because I can take care of myself. So
I just think you have to pick and choose your battles sometime, and you have to know when to walk away when it's best for everyone. Because, like you said, the alternative can be really tragic sometimes.
yeah, absolutely. So we used to have Big Brother. We used to have a lot of these programs out there. If we're seeing that a lot of these young kids, right, have grown up, and I mean, unfortunately, it's a substantial amount. And I'm talking about my urban environments too, more so because that's what I know, right? That's where I'm
Okay.
from. That's what I know. Um, those young kids have now become men who weren't raised by men. What do we do with that next generation that need to be raised by men, but now the ones who are men? You get what I'm saying? You get where I'm going?
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be hard to turn things around. It's going to be hard. And I feel like my generation, I'm a 70s baby. I feel like my generation dropped the ball. And now you have 90s babies who weren't quite raised correctly by the 60s and 70s babies who are trying to do the whole parenting thing. And if they're trying to parent at all, you have so many guys who don't even think about their kids like they should. Um, it's going to be so hard to turn it around because you're asking people who weren't completely educated themselves to now be parents. They weren't necessarily prepared in the right way, and now they're having to be parents. And with each generation, we just like my generation, just feels like we want to ball. We want to still be young. We want to compete with the younger generations instead of trying to teach them. So you got guys my age still running behind 20 somethings and 30 somethings. And, no, leave the little girls alone and let the other generation have it, move on with your life.
Yeah, well, the women are still going with younger too.
So, and
it's an easy swap.
Yeah, and people just aren't really ready to grow up, call themselves old. There are a lot of things that used to be considered a badge of honor back in the day that's not now. Like, for example, my grandmother was always proud to be called a grandmother. Okay. But you call a woman a grandmother now, she's almost ready to fight you. I'm not a grandma, I'm a nana. Because grandmother sounds old, to some people. And I just think that there are different phases in life. And once you move out of that knucklehead phase where as a guy you're chasing women, chasing money or whatever it is you're doing, there has to be you have to get to a point, especially when you become a parent. That's when it should start, where it's like, okay, I need to live my life a certain way to ensure that this kid sees the best version of me while they're growing up so they can be the best version of themselves. And we deny that now. We club at the same places our kids do. And so how we turn it around, I have no idea. You mentioned like the boys club and things of that nature, but we've gotten so skeptical as a society to where we don't trust people. And I'm not going to send my boy down there and have some man touching on him. And so because there's no trust, and people don't want to participate in certain things anymore. And a lot of those groups are dissolving. And look how bad things were with the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
So that group is all but dissolved. And so we don't really have a choice but to hope and pray that people get it right. And we see that they're not doing it. And me personally, as far as where I think it should start, I grew up in the church. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm, overly religious or anything like that, but I got my foundation in the church. Okay. That's where I saw what I would consider like a man's man. Those older guys, when I was growing up in the 70s, a lot of the men in my church were born anywhere between like the 20s and the 50s. And so I saw like really old school type of men who, with the big calloused hands because they worked in the gardens all day and worked from sun up to sundown and, got the big piece of chicken when dinner time came around. And so I had those examples, and I think maybe that's the best place to start because, the churches are filled every Sunday, but what they're teaching, I don't know. They seem to be teaching more about prosperity and financial prosperity than anything else. But that's the best opportunity, I think, to reach young boys and give them some type of moral foundation to where they can be grounded in something. So when they do get older and exposed to a lot more, they'll always have a home base to say, well, this doesn't feel right because this is something that was instilled in me. So I guess that's the best place to start.
I think also too, if you're not of, the religious persuasion, right? I think sports for young boys is a huge deal. And I know where I'm at right now with my son, where I live in New Jersey. It is, first of all, he doesn't like sports. He's sitting there when I wanted to put him in football, and he's like, what if I get a CTE? I'm like, just go play. Just go play football. And then I also see some parents who are like, no, I don't want them to get hurt. I don't want them to get injured. I think that started to change too when I had my kids I made my son, I made my youngest I made him do football and baseball because I was like, you need sportsmanship. You need to know what it is to work with your peers, with people you get along with people you don't get along with having a hierarchy. You need to learn how to do that. I said, you need to learn to cohesively work together. And like halfway through the season when he wanted to get out of it, I said, no, absolutely not. This is not a singular sport. This is not a one-man sport. This is a team sport. And if you don't go, you let your team down and your team fails. And I think that is, sportsmanship is a great place for youth boys to learn kind of like the fundamentals and the in and outs of social interaction with other male peers, right? Because that's not happening so much anymore. Not that there isn't sports, but you're not like when you look at a school of 1,000 kids, right? Let's say, I don't know, let's just say 500 of them are boys. You've only got like 20 of them doing sports. You don't got so many, doing sports. You've got moms who are sitting there like, no. Like, I don't want them to get hurt. I don't want them to get injured.
Yeah.
These participation trophy bullshit. Like,
the worst thing that was ever created, a participation trophy. Worst thing ever created. I think part of the problem with sports is that, now, first of all, I agree with you about sports. But I think another problem you run into, again, parents who don't necessarily know how to be parents. Like in basketball, you have the parents, oh, my son's going to be the next Michael Jordan or the next LeBron James. And so there's more of a focus, not necessarily on teamwork, because the parent wants the kid to be the star. So now the parent is yelling at the coach, my son ain't playing enough. My son ain't shooting enough, fighting with referees and doing crazy things like that. And I coached a little league one time, 12-year-old girls, actually. And I had a problem with one of the parents, and her daughter played soccer. Her daughter loved to play soccer, didn't like basketball, but her mom played basketball. So her mom wanted her to play. Her daughter had no interest in being out there whatsoever. But, I tried to find a role for her. And it was setting picks, playing defense. And she kind of liked it because she was kind of the physical type. But she wasn't much of a shooter. So I never asked her to shoot. Her mom got pissed at me. How come my daughter doesn't get to shoot? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's not her purpose. She has to play her role. That's part of being a team. And so, like, if the parents don't understand it, it's going to be almost impossible to get the kid to understand it. Well, yeah. And so I do think sports is a great place to start, but guys, so much parent involvement now. And
well, that's when you ban the damn parents. I remember when we were sitting there with my son. So the other thing, so we're sitting there with my son, and I guess there's like, it was baseball. The coach called a bad call, and the mom is flipping out. And I just looked at her and I was like, "Are you they're like 7, right? Like, small fish, big, big, like what, like big fish, small pond. Like you get it, right? Like they're not going to be the next Derek Jeter. Like, let's move on, kind of thing. So like the other parents were there to put her in her place and stuff like that. But I definitely also, like, my son did see favoritism. So when the coach's dad and the other kid, but I also wanted him to learn about nepotism. I wanted him to learn about that, right? Like, this is the greatest time for you to understand that it don't matter how hard you work, sometimes somebody else is going to get it and not you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, and that is great that you did that, because kids need to experience disappointment. And now, no parent wants their kid to be disappointed, but you're trying to prepare your kid for real life. Real life has a ton of disappointments. There are going to be things you're not going to be able to have. And you have to understand that as a parent and allow your kid to deal with that. Teach them how to cope. There's so many people in this world that don't know how to cope. Man, a woman leaves him. Now he wants to go shoot up the woman and her kids and do crazy stuff because he doesn't know how to cope. Okay. It's okay if your child gets disappointed. You help them work through that. So if the coach's son gets to play quarterback simply because he's the coach's son, then that's just something you have to deal with,
Right.
because when you get off in corporate America, they're going to be, the CEO's son is going to be your boss and you're going to have to deal with that. And there's nothing you can do about that.
Absolutely. And that's the one thing I do with my kids. What I did with them, they're all older now, is when we play board games, I never let them win. I don't care how young they were and how old I was and how much more experience I had. Especially in Scrabble, they never won. Like, it was just so I was called a mean mom. And I said, no, I'm teaching them that in life, you can fail and fail and fail and fail, but you got to keep going and going and going and going, and you can't stop, right? Because at some point you're going to have a win. And then when they did win and they truly won, you know how much more satisfied they were with a real win than they were with me just letting them win?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. When you're not getting participation trophies, that real win feels really good. I think about my dad used to beat the brakes off of me in basketball, and I was probably 16 years old before I actually beat him for the first time. And I just remember how I felt. I mean, that was just the greatest feeling ever. I felt like I was a man at 16 simply over a basketball game, And so I do think that it's important that you make them work, make them earn it, People are looking for shortcuts way too much these days. And man, it goes a long way to ruining a child and making them an adult that basically just thinks that everyone's entitled, that they're entitled to everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. My kids, they got to earn everything. The minute that they started throwing their clean clothes back in the hamper because they didn't want to put it away was the day they started doing their own laundry. That was it. Like, I was complete tough love. And it's, my kids didn't, my boys didn't have real good role models, male role models. Their dad wasn't present in their life. My ex, for my 20-year-old, he's now been more in his life as he's matured into a man. But I feel like there was really a deficit during those. I think those really, real important years are kind of like that 10 to 18 for a young man who's trying to learn who they are and what does it mean to be a man. And then you don't want to get that definition from your friends or your peers. You want to have that kind of role model to look up to and that good figure that you can say, I want to be like you. Then when they don't have that, they don't want to end up being like their dad. So they try so hard to be the complete opposite that it's still they go on the other extreme end of that. So to sum it all up, I want you, if you can, just say again those 6 components of what it means to be a man.
A visionary, a leader, a cultivator, a teacher, a provider, a protector. Those are the 6 components to being a man. I think that a man needs to be present in a boy's life so he'll have something to pattern himself after. I patterned myself after my dad, and I had an older brother who was 5.5 years older than me, so he was part of that as well. And I patterned myself after them. I saw what my dad did on a daily basis. I saw, him go to work every day. My dad never missed work unless he was like on the verge of going to the hospital. And my mom was the same way, but so his work ethic was legendary. All right. And I mean, I was like that growing up. I only missed, the only time I ever missed a day of school, I missed a week of school, was in 3rd grade when I got the chicken pox. I had perfect attendance from 4th grade up until graduation, because that was my job, was to go to school, just like, my dad had a job. So that was my job. And I always went because that's what I was supposed to do. And as I got older, because I had that pattern of what a man was, when I saw other things, when I got exposed to things that may be of a nefarious type of thing, then I was like, okay, well, that doesn't feel right to me. I'm not going to do it. So, I'm not going to smoke, or I'm not going to sip this drink, or any of these things I see some of my peers doing, because I've never seen my dad do that. Now, I found out as I got older, yeah, my parents did drink, but I never saw it. I was probably somewhere, they probably sent me to my cousin's house to spend the night or something, and they probably ball out and had little play spades and did whatever they did, but I never saw it. And so, like I said, I just had an example of what I thought a man should be, and I didn't waver from that once I got out into the world. And so I think it's very important for just men to be present in your kids' life. And not just for the boys. I mean, girls need their dads too.
Yeah.
But I think boys have more of a problem right now. And I think that it's very important for dads to be a part of their son's life and show him good examples. Don't just teach him how to dress, how to be fly, and buy expensive stuff and think that's being a dad. It's a lot more to it than that. Teach him that it's okay to be smart. All right. And a lot of the Black communities is almost like you looked at as being lame because you try in school. And that's the dumbest thing ever. you know so teach your kid it's okay to be smart. Teach your kid how to talk to women. Oh my goodness, these guys don't know how to talk to women. Oh my goodness. That's another show. Okay, that's another show.
I'm so glad I'm not in the dating world anymore. I really am.
Yeah, teach guys how to talk to and how to treat women. Teach them how to respect and revere older people. The United States is like the only country that wants to throw away our old people.
Yes.
Other countries, they love their older people. They speak to them. They get the wisdom from them. People don't get to be 70, 80, 90 years old from being stupid.
Exactly.
Okay. And so, listen to them. And we need to teach all of that stuff. And I'm sorry if I'm kind of rambling a bit.
No. I told you, you're wise. You're my wise man. I know.
It's just, part of the reason I started my show 10 years ago is because I felt like there were things that weren't being discussed on television or on the radio that needed to be discussed. And part of that was just people getting back to being decent people. Okay. And I have an old school mentality, and I'm not saying you have to do everything that your parents did, but let that be your foundation. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay. I'm not going to look at myself and say, okay, I've been to college. I have a decent job. I didn't, have kids out of wedlock. I tried to do everything a certain way. So I'm not going to turn around and completely try to raise my child a different way when it worked for me,
Right.
And so I just think that people need to look at themselves and honestly evaluate what they're doing and the example they're setting for their children. Okay. Stop letting YouTube babysit your children and spend some time with them. Make them read books, do something in order to get them in the right mindset so they can be productive and have a purpose. Because a boy without a purpose grows up to be a dangerous adult.
Yes. I couldn't have said it better myself. I actually came home from work this afternoon and asked my son, when was the last time he was out of his room? Like, when was the last time you were out of your room? When did you last shower? Can you smell yourself? Like, because they're on their computers, they're in their room, they're on their computers, and that's the way they socialize nowadays. There's no more of the regular. I think I saw something on Facebook that said something to the effect of, one of my friends had it up. What if the social media closed at 6 p.m. like everything else, right?
Ooh.
Would you then be out there socializing and meeting people the way we used to? I think that's some of the issues as well, where everybody is into the social media versus actually being out and living and enjoying. Everybody's taking videos for the moments, pictures for the moments, but not actually living in the moment.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
that's part of
Oh,
the thing.
yeah. It's a little too much with the selfies and stuff. And I mean, when I think back to when I took pictures in my 20s, I can look in a picture and tell you where I was, what I was doing, why we were there. But now people take hundreds of pictures in a week. They have no idea what was going on in any of those photos.
Yeah, easy
You know?
access, easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But definitely children do learn by example. And I'll leave off with this last story. Although it's my daughter, it's still just the way they look up to you. And that was the day that it dawned on me. I was 17. I had her at 15. I was 17, so she was 2. And I was going to college. I was in college at this point, and I got my book bag on one shoulder. I didn't have it on both arms. I just had it on one shoulder. And my daughter went to the daycare that was at the college. So I'm walking with the book bag on my one shoulder. And my daughter, usually I always put it on both her shoulders, both her arms, so it's easier for her book bag. So we're walking, and I kind of glimpse, kind of look peripherally, and I see my daughter taking her book bag off her both her shoulders and leaving it on one. And then she looked up at me, like kind of like, "Look, mom, I'm like you. I'm doing what you do."
Yeah.
And like, as simple as that moment was,
Hmm.
that stuck with me forever. What I do, she sees. What I do, she does.
Yes.
So I knew I had to be mindful of what I did. And although I kind of shielded the kids from a lot of the busting my butt and things just always happened. Food was always on the table, roof was over their head, clothes was always on the back, vacations always happened. They just never saw the work that kind of went behind getting there.
Hmm.
That part I do regret not letting them see. Um, because then they don't understand the sacrifice that I went through. They just thought it was easy. Like, you
Yeah.
just get up, you go to work, and that's it. They didn't see
Right.
the days I sat on the toilet bowl crying because I didn't know when we were going to eat, you know?
Yeah.
So that's just what I'm saying. It's just my opinion. No experts here.
No, I agree about. I mean, that was a great example of how someone was watching you and trying to mimic you. And guys need to understand that their kids are watching. And one more thing I'll say, and I'll shut up. One more
No.
thing. And I really want to say this to the guys. And for the women watching this, if your guy's not watching, show him this, if nothing else. Guys, absolutely do not argue with your woman in front of your kid. Oh my goodness. Let me tell you. And I'm sorry, I got allergies. You have to
No,
forgive me.
it's okay.
And
You're
so
not crying. You're not crying for no
right, right,
reason.
right. I saw the Lion King earlier. But I live in Mississippi, so pollen humidity. But I absolutely cannot stand to see. Now, I mean, there are a lot of co-parenting situations going on in society today. All right, you may not like your child's mom or get along with your child's mom. That's fine. I get that. Okay, but do not let your kids see you disrespect their mom. I mean, that goes a long way towards how they treat women in the future, or if they're daughters, how they allow themselves to be treated by men. So if you have any type of misunderstanding or disagreement, make sure the kid is out of earshot, and then you all have whatever discussion you need to have. Do not badmouth your child's mom in front of them. All right. That's the absolute most punk thing a guy can do. So I'll stay with it. I'll leave.
And women, vice versa. Women, do not badmouth your children's father in front of them either, because then it takes away that authority that he has in there as well. You know, like you said, co-parenting isn't always easy. So with my middle one's father, phenomenal. We're like friends. We talk all the time. No issues. My son can't get over on neither one of us. The youngest one, non-existent. Doesn't even exist. And that causes, like you said, a lot of strife. The kid gets stuck in the middle, trying to pick sides, what's going on. And the one thing you got to remember is you may not like each other now, and you may not be friends now, but at one point, you loved each other enough to conceive a child. And that is something that has to, even if it was an accident, there was enough emotion there for you guys to have this child. And if you can go back to that moment and reflect on that, maybe it can, take away some of that angst. But anyway, Q, tell us where we can find you. When do you do your shows? How can we get in touch with you?
Okay, well, you can always email me at talk2qnow@gmail.com, or you can catch me in any of the places you have below. Um, you can pretty much search Talk to Q and you'll find me. Uh, my show, new podcast comes out every Thursday, the audio podcast. I do Facebook Live and YouTube Live, uh, kind of just as they happen. If there's a topic I want to discuss, then I'll throw it on my calendar over at talk2q.com of upcoming events. So you can go there, click on the calendar, or sign up for my email newsletter, and you can keep up with when I do the Facebook and YouTube lives. But as far as the audio, subscribe to me on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever podcasts are found, and you will have one every Thursday morning when you wake up. And I just want to say it's a pleasure to do this show with you. You're one of my favorite people. And of course, I'm going to be begging you to come back on my show soon when your schedule allows. But I truly enjoyed the conversation here.
I always enjoy it with you. I say I'm not shitting you. I'm not pulling your chain when I tell you that I am honored to have you here this evening. I look up to you immensely. My husband probably hates hearing it all the time, but we talk about
Don't get me in trouble.
I love him. Like I honestly do. I wish you were closer. When everything gets back to normal, I have to take a trip to Mississippi. I've never been there.
Okay.
So I have to take a trip down south and see you. So once all this COVID stuff is over. But
you know what? I love that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. You got to cook me some Southern food. We got to do a big barbecue. Like, I'll buy everything. Don't worry about it. You just cook it.
All right. I can do that.
I got to meet the queen. I got to take care of all that. So, listen, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. I enjoyed, just shooting the shit and talking about it, and we kind of veered off in a couple of different directions, but we started and we ended in the same direction. So I'm going to leave you with what I always leave you with is all you've experienced is all you know, then you are in a deficit of knowledge. Again, thank you. If this is the first time watching, make sure you hit subscribe and hit that notification button so you know when I'm live the next time, every Sunday, 8 p.m. If you're new, also make sure you go back and check out season 1, season 2. You can just see how I'm growing. I'm not quite where Q is yet, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe one day.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
So on that note, everybody, one love.